Hi, this is TheHande's, and welcome to my top 10 episodes from the new adventures of He-Man. So, like I said in the introduction to my bottom 10 episodes, I decided not to stress the ratings so much when making this top 10. And one important caveat that I decided to do right from the get-go was that I decided to not include any episodes which are the first or last episodes of a particular story arc. I did this specifically because those episodes tended to get disproportionately high ratings. And like I said in the introduction, I do feel honestly that there were some episodes which I gave way lower ratings for than they actually deserved. And so I kind of wanted to correct some of those mistakes. Because after all, reviews are just opinions, and it's very obvious that on some days, when I reviewed certain episodes, I must have been in a bit of a grumpy mood. But at the very least, I will say that the episodes that I gave either full 3 Grayskulls out of 3, or otherwise relatively highly rated episodes, will at least count as some kind of honorable mentions, such as A New Beginning, Sword and Staff, The Queen's Gambit, and The Final Invasion. Now let's get on with the list. At number 10, Once Upon a Time. So this is the episode which features Teela's cameo appearance on the New Adventures. Basically, the premise of this one isn't anything too spectacular. Skeletor is after the Encyclopedia of Evil, which is located somewhere on Primus, and the sorceress decides to send Teela to the future because He-Man's just feeling homesick. Which happens to be fortunate because that means He-Man and Teela get to join forces once again to fight against Skeletor. Now, in my review for Once Upon a Time, I noted how I had slightly mixed feelings about this, particularly the fact that Teela doesn't look anything like her counterpart from the Filmation show is the thing that is probably the most distracting in this episode. But at the same time, it is kind of one of the standout episodes of the New Adventures, even if it is purely because of Teela's appearance here. However, that's not the reason why I chose this one for the top 10. The reason I chose this one for the top 10 is the very reason which is my favorite aspect of the entire episode, and that is Skeletor himself. Skeletor does a lot of magic spells in this episode, sends the characters to a weird pocket dimension. Even though this part is not really the part that is supposed to harken back to the Filmation show, somewhat ironically, it is the part that actually harkens the most back to the Filmation show. And this is why I find this episode quite entertaining. But, as I stated in my review, I do feel that the episode actually feels a little out of place in the context of the New Adventures of He-Man. So, somewhat ironically, the very best thing about it is also the thing that is also kinda its weakness. But I do enjoy this episode quite a bit, so I had to put it in the top 10. At number 9, The Heat. Now, because I disallowed both the first and the last episode of the first 6-episode cycle of this series, of course, that leaves The Heat as the best episode of this part of the series. The Heat is where I think the series officially really gets going. Now, A New Beginning is a good episode, while The Quest for the Crystals is a kind of a slow build-up episode where we just establish a lot of places and characters. Now, The Heat is also, I think, a bit of a good litmus test. Basically, it hits you with probably the most grating part right at the beginning, but if you can survive past that, then you are gonna love the ending of the episode. My favorite thing is that this is the first full-on heroes versus villains team fight, even though the heroes team only includes He-Man, Flipshot, and Hydran. But this finale is really well thought out, and I personally really like how determined the characters are. But yes, you are gonna have to sit through the first half of the episode, which focuses on the Primus scientists. Even though I complain about these characters a lot, a few of them did start to grow on me over time. And also, The Heat has extremely high animation quality, so even if some of the comedy is honestly not that funny in the first half, I would still call this quite an entertaining episode on the overall. At number 8, He-Fan. He-Fan is an episode with a plot premise that doesn't sound very promising, but which in the overall actually turns out to be very entertaining. First of all, Skeletor for once has an extremely efficient plan of taking down Primus, having built a machine that can destroy Primus's shield, which he plans to install on all of the mutant fighters. So He-Man and company have to go on a stealth mission to stop him, and accidentally drag a He-Man fangirl called Melindra along with them. Now, the stakes are pretty high in this episode, with Skeletor having found a way to permanently destroy the Primus shield, but the real outstanding aspect of this episode, of course, is Melindra herself. A cheesy, over-the-top comic relief character who I think completely steals the show and adds a lot of funny energy into the mix. Now, I will admit this episode is not for everybody, and I maybe find this a little bit more entertaining than most people would, but I do think Melindra is used very well, and there's a lot of hilarious comedy set pieces throughout this episode where I think she gets to shine. And honestly, it's just kind of a goofy episode, and I typically tend to like goofy episodes of He-Man, even in the Filmation show, so that probably explains why I like this one. Plus, I have to give Skeletor's plan a lot of credit. However, the production quality on this episode is a bit of a hit and miss, and that's the reason I kinda had to put it on the lower half of the list. And at number 7, Slaves to the Machine. In this episode, the mutants' war machines all get busted up and they call the Mechanauts to help them. The heroes also begin to suspect that the villains are up to something, hitch a ride on the Mechanaut ship, and they are all taken to the planet Mechana, where it is revealed that the mutants plan to steal their master computer. And although He-Man and the Galactic Guardians let the Mechanauts know about this, the Protectons, who are the rulers of Mechana, decide not to allow either the heroes or the villains to leave. And in the end, He-Man and the heroes then help the Mechanauts become freed of their robot overlords. Slave to the Machines, I think, is a perfect example of when New Adventures of He-Man actually tried to build a believable world, they could actually do it fairly successfully. In this episode, I really became invested in the story of the Mechanauts and the Protectons, which is quite the task considering these characters appeared in no other episodes. And the idea that the Protectons are so technologically advanced that they could hinder both the mutants and the heroes is kind of a frightening and cool idea. Plus, much like with Once Upon a Time, one of the things I really love about this episode is how it harkens back to the Filmation show, with He-Man using his sword in various creative ways, and not just using backlighting to solve everything. It's an episode with a very strong plot and excellent structure, and its only hindrance, and I hate to admit is the reason it didn't get into the top 5, is because of the animation direction. The studio that Jetlag used to animate this one decided to use very dull colors, and also the art has this kind of a weird quality to it where the characters don't seem to be drawn quite on model. Because of this, the episode looks quite jarringly different compared to literally every other New Adventures of He-Man episode, but is by no means bad. If you can forget the visual imperfections, I think you will enjoy the story in the action set pieces. But like I did say in my review, I did feel that the ending was slightly rushed. And number 6, Adam's Adventure. In this episode, Skeletor receives a machine that allows him to copy the brainwaves of anyone and decides to use this to copy He-Man's brainwaves and attack him when he's not surrounded by the Galactic Guardians in an effort to try to catch him. However, he of course accidentally captures Adam and a bunch of the other characters when he's not transformed and is very confused by the situation, and also very nearly murders Adam and his friends. Adam's Adventure is one of the best animated episodes of this entire series, and I think it's worth watching simply for its art direction alone. Now, in my review, I did point out how it weirds me out that Skeletor can't seem to figure out that Adam is from the same timeline, and therefore he and He-Man would naturally have to be the same person. It is a big enough of a plot hole that is enough of a reason to place this episode outside the top 5. But one thing I need to point out is that Skeletor's plan is to catch He-Man while he's alone, or at least not surrounded by characters who could help him. And this episode is not about Skeletor trying to figure out He-Man's secret identity, because he doesn't know that He-Man has a secret identity. All he knows is that he definitely located He-Man's brainwaves amongst the heroes, and then for some reason can't find him when they capture the ship. And the fact of how he has no chill and actually plans to just flat out kill the other characters for not telling him where He-Man is shows the kind of bloodthirstiness that, honestly, I really enjoy. Yes, I do usually like it when Skeletor does silly stuff on this show, but the No Chill Skelly is also a refreshing take. Certainly more refreshing than No Brain Flog. Now, the ending of this episode is a little bit silly, where Skeletor gets defeated by pollen because apparently he's allergic to it, and Cebrian actually does well to hide Adam's transformation from the other characters. It's a story premise that could have very easily fallen flat on its face, but due to excellent direction and excellent execution, it is actually one of the highlight episodes of the series. But, like I said, if you get hung up on the fact that Skeletor doesn't know Adam, even though based on the Filmation show he absolutely should, then this episode might bother you a little bit. At number 5, 4 Ways to Sundown. 4 Ways to Sundown is an episode where 4 characters, Hydran, Flipshot, Slushhead, and Flog, tell about the Battle of the Quagny Swamp, each of them highlighting different aspects of it and coloring it with their own interpretations of how the events played out. This is hands down one of the funniest episodes of the show. And I feel, honestly, a little embarrassed that I only gave it 1.5 grayskulls out of 3. Because I have subsequently watched this episode way more times than any other episode of the New Adventures of He-Man. Now, story-wise, there really are no massive stakes here. It is really just meant to be an episode where you kind of laugh at the different things that the characters highlight about the events. And yes, I do find it a little bit cringy how in Hydran and Flipshot's story, He-Man is depicted as a complete wimp. But this episode has ridiculously high animation quality, and if you take it all in good fun, this episode is hilarious. Like I pointed out, this episode reminds me of Fire in a Crowded Workshop from Sonic Boom, basically the same exact concept, and it's also one of my favorite Sonic Boom episodes. The fact that this episode is pretty much a repeat of that probably makes it a no-brainer for me to include it on the top 5. But like I said, the episode really has no stakes, so that's why I didn't have the heart to put it any higher. At number 4, the Zone of Darkness. In this episode, Sebrian and Mara are pulled down to the Freon region of Denebria. He-Man, Zegatar, and Tuscadar go out to try to find them and encounter the Freons, these freaky-looking people who insist that they are Primans despite their appearance. The mutants are also afraid of the Freons initially, and He-Man and company are distrustful of them, but the Freons fully believe that the heroes are going to take them back to Primus. It turns out that they have in fact saved Sebrian's and Mara's lives, and that the Freon region does in fact have transformative qualities on anybody who stays there for an extended period of time. Now, I'm pretty sure every single version of He-Man has tried to do a racism storyline somewhere down the line, and a lot of the time, they just don't do it very well, where they just artificially plug a character into the storyline who has no context in the series and try to make it work. But the Zone of Darkness is the exception, because the heroes are shown to be so distrustful against the Freons for seemingly no reason. But the care and attention that the episode director put into the pacing of this episode is the reason why it works so well. And the way how the characters slowly realize the error of their ways, elevated above stuff like Attack from Below from the Filmation show. In that, the Zone of Darkness really is one of the best written and directed episodes of the series. Well, at least as far as the story is concerned. Animation-wise, unfortunately, it's a bit of a hit-and-miss affair. The art is actually pretty good, but some of the animation does run a little bit erratically. And as I pointed out in my review, the opening setup, where Skeletor manages to capture some of He-Man's friends, was already done several times at this point in the series, so it doesn't feel very novel. But if you forgive these small imperfections, this actually is a really good episode, and very much deserving of its number 4 spot. Number 3, Mutiny on the Mothership. This is the second episode to be inspired by the Star Trek episode The Arena, where both the heroes and the mutants are caught in an electric storm in space, run into each other and have to put up a temporary truce after the mutants initially run amok, with Butthead, Staghorn, and Quake staging a mutiny against Flog, Slushhead, and Skeletor. Now, what makes the Mutiny on the Mothership work, in stark contrast to the Dreadator, is that it shows the mutants' internal chemistry is based on a very uneasy balance of authority. So uneasy, in fact, that one character questioning Flog's leadership is enough to almost collapse it. But like I said, this is also one of my favorite episodes which focuses on Flog. In so many other episodes, Flog unfortunately takes a backseat to Skeletor, but here he really is at the forefront of events. And especially when the villains and heroes have to put up a temporary truce, and when the mutants eventually turn against the heroes, Flog is the one who actually has to talk sense into Skeletor. In fact, if there's one part of the episode that I don't like, it's honestly the finale, in which the nearly omnipotent aliens, which in my view are clearly based on the Metrons from the Arena episode, kind of resolve the conflict. It unfortunately has shades of the game's story arc from the series ending, but isn't luckily nearly as dumb. Also, this episode has really good animation direction, and the character dynamics feel very genuine. There's maybe 1 or 2 logical problems I have with the episode, which I pointed out in my review, but overall, every single time I come back to this episode, I honestly just like it even. And so that's why it got bumped all the way up to spot number 3 on the top 10. Easily one of the best self-contained stories from this series. At number 2, The Bride of Slushhead. In this episode, the heroes are forced to land on Denebria, end up saving Felka, who is Slushhead's bride. And Slushhead is so grateful that he takes the heroes under his protection as he and Felka's wedding is about to take place, and heck, he even makes Segatar his best man. Now don't get me wrong, the writing in The Bride of Slushhead is nowhere near the level of Mutiny on the Mothership, Zone of Darkness, or Slaves of the Machine, but it is an incredibly hilarious episode, and I just love the fact that Slushhead stands up against the mutants in order to keep the heroes safe as gratitude for saving his wife-to-be. I also just really like Felka as a character, and the wedding setting of this episode has more than enough goofy and silly highlights to make this episode worthwhile. It is admittedly very cheesy and schmaltzy in places, but you know me, I'm a big softie, and I also happen to love the silly episodes in He-Man, so obviously this episode was gonna get very high on the top 10. I think it's very clear that I actually do prefer this over even some of the more story-intense episodes of the series, and it is very highly recommended. And number 1, Glass-Nosed Schmastnose. In the Glass-Nosed Schmastnose, the Galactic Council tries to force a peace between the Primans and the mutants, and initially, Skeletor and the mutants decide to play along in order to seem like they genuinely want peace, make Slushhead their official diplomat, then fake an assassination attempt on Mara in order to be allowed to send a diplomatic delegation to Primus, which they use as subterfuge in an effort to try to destroy the Priman shield. Now, Glass-Nosed Smash-Nose, in my view, marries both the silly side of the New Adventures of He-Man with the serious side, aka Slushhead becoming a diplomat and all the stupid masquerading with the assassination attempt are, of course, very over the top and quite ridiculous. But, like I said, none of this actually clashes with the series' central premise, where the heroes are begrudgingly forced to accept the mutants' peace offer, which is nothing more than a veiled ploy by Skeletor to get under the Primus shield and help Flog have his day at invading Primus. It is very rare for a New Adventures episode to be both silly and serious at the same time and actually do it so successfully. Glass-Nosed Smash-Nose was one of my favorite episodes the first time I saw it, and it stands well on its own even against the more story-driven episodes of this series. Without question, the best episode of the New Adventures of He-Man. And that was the Top 10. Until next time, I have the power, so can you.